Hello everybody, how are you going? Welcome to the surprisingly complicated history of O Canada. Now look, I will definitely admit that I don't know too much about the national anthem of, well, virtually any other country, and I don't even probably know enough about Australia's, but let's just find out a bit more of the history and why it's so apparently complicated in Canada.
Much of Canadian history has been defined by the many conflicts and compromises between French-speaking Quebec and the rest of Canada, which is dominantly English-speaking. Canada itself is one of those compromises, as the colony of Canada agreed to join with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to form the Dominion of Canada, splitting the colony of Canada into primarily English Ontario and primarily French Quebec. The story of the Canadian national anthem is a story of this tense relationship between French and English Canada, but also of a compromise like so many that had to be made for Canada to become the country it is today.
Right.
Since Confederation in 1867, Canadians have been using a variety of patriotic songs as a national anthem. In English Canada, there were two songs that managed to rise to de facto national anthem status: God Save the King, a holdover from British rule, and The Maple Leaf Forever, a song written by Alexander Muir in 1867 to commemorate Confederation.
Now look, right out of the gate, I absolutely don't know a thing in terms of, I've heard of God Save the Queen before, and I guess God Save the King definitely does make sense, but then I've never heard of the Maple Leaf Forever song, a Canadian national song, not national anthem, but dedicated to the fathers and mothers of... Oh, I'm not sure, to be honest, but words and music by Alex Muir B.A. Fair enough. But I did also find it quite surprising when he mentioned that Canada itself is a compromise, and I've never heard it be summed up like that. I mean, I've heard that obviously Canada has had quite its fair share of problems between the two independent communities, or whatever you want to be calling them, cultures, so to say, and there are also things that I've never heard of, like Rupert's Land being the United Kingdom, I mean, or belonging to the United Kingdom. Obviously that has since been split up into quite a few different ones, and then Quebec has grown as well, and so there are a few changes here since 1867, but as we can also see from the little key there, apparently the provinces only comprised of Quebec, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, or I guess maybe PEI? No, that seems to be in grey as well, and so other countries were entirely United Kingdom based, and that doesn't make sense, because to be saying that the grey is the United Kingdom, okay, that's fair enough, but then why is the pink not, I don't know, just French? Like, surely that's the two countries before they've been federated, because it's the Dominion of Canada. But no, regardless of that, now that he has also set the tone of the video, I can understand why it would be quite a complicated situation, because you need to be trying to pay homage to two cultures in one, with, like we've seen before, one flag and one national anthem and everything like that, where given the time period of when this entire thing is being organized, I can't imagine that it was the most amicable time between the two cultures, and really just, I don't know how you would even vote on that. Do you do a referendum? Do you just let Britain decide because they're, I guess, the superpower? Many things, and hopefully he elaborates.
God Save the King would never really play well in Quebec, as their heritage was more closely linked to that of France than to the United Kingdom.
Funny that.
And anyway, what Canada needed going forward was an anthem of its own. That left The Maple Leaf Forever. While wildly popular with English Canadians, its premise would prove to be problematic with French Canadians. Namely, the fact that the first verse of the song chronicles British General James Wolfe's conquest of Quebec, and the entire song drips with English supremacy.
Right. Fair enough. So it's basically a UK national anthem anyway. The dauntless hero came from Britain's shore. Wow. And then planned to firm Britannia's flag on Canada's fair domain. Yeah, I can understand. I was going, surely between God Save the King or anything else, it would make sense to just take the other one. But when you read these lyrics, it just continues on in a very British tradition. The thistle, the shamrock, rose entwined, the maple leaf forever. And even just the fact that it ends with God save our queen and heaven bless the maple leaf forever. I mean, it's nice that they're at least attempting to go, okay, we're not just Britain, but I can understand why there would have been so many different problems with it. Just going, yeah, just implanted Britannia's flag and just conquered Quebec. No wonder they had a problem with it, because it just isn't paying homage to both cultures, and you are a dual culture country, and so you need to be doing that. Even though one might have 70% or 30% or 45% or 55%, whatever it is, you still need to just be going, okay, we're not all this. That's a building.
With the two existing national anthem choices failing to appeal to French Canadians, a new song was commissioned by Quebec's Lieutenant Governor, Theodore Robitaille. The song was to be a patriotic song for the occasion of Saint-Jean-Baptiste Day, and was composed by Calixa Lavallée with words by Sir Adolphe Basile Routier. The resulting song was O Canada in its original French.
Original French? Interesting. your history is an epic of the most brilliant exploits. Exploits? Really? Of the most brilliant exploits? That doesn't really make sense to me, but either way, it's interesting to hear the melody being with the French, because I guess they just went, okay, stuff it. The British clearly can't make a song that's for everyone. We just need to get rid of it overall, even though it is in French, so you can't include everyone, but at least the words or the lyrics of the song can be inclusive, even if the language that the song is sung in cannot be. And even just from this little snippet that I've heard so far, I can definitely agree that this is a lot more inclusive or a lot less exclusive, because you're not just going Britain this, Britain that, Britannia this, and then they didn't just swap it over to go, yes, France, 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 France. Like, it actually just goes, okay, talking about different things, actually talking about the land of our forefathers. Okay, that's now 2 lines, at least they made it through. Your front is wreathed in a glorious garland of flowers. Wow, an entire little, what do you call it? There is a word for it, but let's just call it a paragraph without even mentioning a country. It's just perfect. But I mean, Canada's there, but that's fair enough. And even if I then just jump ahead, look, once again, we don't have a country. You don't even talk about particular people. You talk about the land and what it offers people, not what its history is.
The song was well received at its first performance on June 24th, 1880 in Quebec City, but would not become the instant success that Robitaille had hoped for. Despite its publication without copyright, the song was sparsely reprinted, and Lavallee's 1891 obituary would fail to list the song among his accomplishments.
Right.
Still, its popularity would grow over time in Quebec, and in 1901 made its debut in English Canada in a performance for the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall, the future King George V and Queen Mary.
Wow.
5 years after this performance, the song would finally be translated into English by Thomas Bedford Richardson. These lyrics were quite different from today's English lyrics.
Land of old. Thy brow is crowned with leaves of red and gold. To be fair, they certainly also work. The melody just, I guess it leaves it quite open-ended. Beneath the shade of the Holy Cross, thy children own their birth. It's interesting because this is definitely very different to the other one that we literally just heard, but he also just said that this is a translation, so I'm wondering, is this actually a translation, or is it just a complete rewrite to the melody and just offering up a different set of lyrics entirely, is what I can only assume. It does, however, seem to be following the same rhyming scheme, or I'm not sure what you would call it, but the structure of the wording within the song. Once again, it goes for the double lines, and I'm sure it continues from there as well. It's just interesting that they decided to, I guess like you said, translate it, but then just go to thesaurus and just change whatever words you could, and then just rewrite the song entirely after that. I just don't really get how on one hand you can say it's a new one, and then on the other hand say it's a translation, especially when the other one apparently didn't do so well in the first place, so why would you be copying that unless this was after, I guess? In saying that though, it's fairly devastating to hear that this guy didn't want to be recognized for his work whatsoever. I mean, I can only hope that he is considered basically the grandfather of the entire thing now, but really just to go, it wasn't really a success, I did all these other things that were even greater, and I tried my hand at it, and it failed, and I don't even want any recognition of an entire country's national anthem. Like, that is a big deal. You're not even just writing for a sports team or, I don't know, a school song or something. No, you're writing for an entire country. Is never going to be an easy task, especially because, as we saw, there were already previous attempts and none of them seem to be going down too well, and so it's almost like you go, okay, I'll do it because you asked me, and or maybe you ordered me to, but really, I don't know how well this is going to be going. No one can just seem to bridge the gap between these two parts of Canada, but even then, hopefully he just got to see the fruits of his labor eventually, because like I said, writing for an entire country certainly puts some things on your shoulders, and it's a massive deal to be having that kind of legacy.
Several English versions would be written in the subsequent years, but the most popular lyrics were penned by Robert Stanley Weir, a lawyer from Montreal. These lyrics were similar, but not identical, to those eventually adopted by the Canadian government.
Okay. Our home and native land, true graduate loving all thy son's command. Okay. Wow. It's interesting with the crests as well.
Native land, through patriot love, in all thy son's command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the throne of strong and free, and stand on guard, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
It's interesting, and I just have to pause it there before I hear the rest of the song. I mean, it's weird because they all sound so similar, and of course they do because they are realistically the same melody, but then it's also weird because I'm hearing so much of history in terms of the UK's accent coming through these performers' vocals. It's just like you're hearing, it's almost like it's Scottish mixed in there, and I guess the Irish is definitely going to be in there, and then of course you just see Canada today and you go, okay, I know that the roots are there from the British colonies, but just to tune your ear and go, actually that's Canadian or that's Quebecian or whatever else it could be that is mixing into these accents across all these different performers is really weird. It's kind of off-putting. It doesn't truly sound Canadian to me in that regard, even though all the lyrics point to Rome. Something that I did catch, however, is the fact that it still says London, England, the Frederick Harris Company, and I'm wondering, is that, I mean, I guess it's Oxford Street, so maybe it's saying the printing company or the music company is from London still, and that just truly shows you that they are still wrestling with the ties to the British, going, okay, well, we still need you for this and we still need you for that, and people are still living overseas, so to say, literally overseas, I guess, as well, especially because then it does go ahead and say it's printed in England, and so for that to be such a weird thing that you're having national anthems for a country that is thousands of kilometers away, yes, it's a colony, and a country at the same time, but you're still printing it in England. Like, does Canada just not have the facilities to print it all? I would virtually find that impossible to believe because it's not the 16 or 1700s, or even then, I'm sure they were very happy just to put a printing press on the ships and send them over if they could. So it does then make me wonder if these guys who are doing the arrangements and the vocals and the lyrics and everything else, are they truly being influenced by where they are living in terms of if they are living in England and then the writing for Canada based on Canadian weather and forefathers and everything like that? It feels a little bit fake to me.
With these new English lyrics, O Canada found itself in the running to become Canada's national anthem. All three songs would continue to act as de facto national anthems, but having competing national anthems largely defeats the purpose of a national anthem, to act as an expression of national identity, and especially important in Canada, as an expression of unity. By 1964, the Canadian government decided it was time to sort out the state of its national anthem. A special joint committee of the Senate and the House of Commons was set up to determine the official status of God Save the Queen and O Canada, notably leaving the patriotic but problematic The Maple Leaf Forever behind.
Right.
On January 31st, 1966, Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson would begin a very long process to establish O Canada as the Canadian national anthem and God Save the Queen as the royal anthem of Canada. On March 15th, 1967, the committee recommended keeping the music and French lyrics to O Canada, but recommended a series of changes to the English lyrics. Following these changes, on February 28, 1972, Secretary of State Gerard Pelletier introduced a bill to adopt O Canada, as adapted by the committee, as the national anthem.
Wow.
This bill, and many others after it, would fail to make it through the House of Commons. Ending this long political saga was Secretary of State Francis Fox, who on June 18, 1980, proposed a bill to adopt O Canada as the national anthem. The National Anthem Act was passed unanimously by the House of Commons and the Senate on June 27, 1980. Canada's new official national anthem debuted on Canada Day, July 1st, 1980, and featured the 1967 committee's English lyrics.
That is ridiculous. How is it taking, or even 1980 is so recent, and that's when the national anthem was finalized and officialized. That is insane. I mean, people have just been singing 3, 4, 5, 10 different national anthems for, I guess, 100 years almost, from 1860, was it, all the way to 1960, and then eventually 1980. That is pretty darn ridiculous if you ask me. I mean, even the fact that it was rejected from the House of Commons is what I believe he said. That just sounds ridiculous. Like, the entire process was started to try and to shore up things. You've been a country for many years now, and you still don't have a national anthem being a united anthem. And so, as well as just trying to deal with everything else, it seemed like they came to a fairly decent conclusion, just being the national anthem and the royal anthem, because of course you still do have the monarchy there, and so it makes sense to be having both, or at least honoring both to that degree. But man, how did it take so long? Now it makes me wonder, when did Australia's national anthem even come out? Well, to be fair, it certainly is not that much more recent, being 1973 compared to the 1980s, but the fact that it was originally written in 1878, it's a pretty similar story to what Canada has. It's just that Canada has a couple of hundred years on Australia as well, in terms of being a federation or a nation, whatever you want to be calling this kind of British colonization of a country. I mean, to be fair though, if I do then scroll down here and just see what was Australia's national anthem until 1974, it was God Save the Queen. Oh, God Save the Queen. I guess, I wonder if we ever did have God Save the King, or if we're just not old enough. Surely in the early days we just would have been old enough, but to be fair, Victoria lived for a very long time, so who knows. Either way, Australia and Canada are not that dissimilar with their national anthem progress.
Finally, Canada's 113-year-long search for a national anthem was able to come to a close.
Crazy, 113 years. Oh.
Since being adopted in 1980, there has been one change to the lyrics. The line, "In all thy sons command," was changed to "In all of us command" on February 7th, 2018, in an attempt to make the anthem gender neutral and more representative of all Canadians.
Wow.
This is the only change to the official lyrics to date.
2018. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be too surprising now that I've heard the entire story with national anthems, but for it to be 2018, or I guess 2017, and still just having the original lyrics to some degree, man, that is very, very slow progress. I wonder if there are many things that can move slower. I mean, they say glaciers move slowly, but I think national anthems must move slower than glaciers, just everything permitted. And it's also just fantastic that we can recognize that in, let's call it 150 years, there can be a couple of changes, and so we can afford to not just go, no, it's the patriotic, it's the history of the entire thing, we cannot change the national anthem. No, you can change it, and in terms of trying to unite everyone, it definitely does make sense to change it as well. I mean, even the fact that, okay, sure, you had Quebec and England and just that feud, but then really, you got basically a 50-50 split. I was talking about maybe it's 70-30 before, but let's just say it's now bang on 50-50. You definitely want to be trying to include everyone now. But hey, look, even though Canada did take quite some time to develop and finalize their national anthem, they are certainly not alone in that story, as we saw Australia is mixed in there as well, and I'm sure they're going to be a host and smattering of other countries as well, and really, I reckon they also didn't waste their time entirely, aka I reckon more non-Canadians would know "O Canada" more than maybe only just bested by "God Save the Queen," but I don't know many people that even know the USA, so they definitely did something right.